Hello and welcome back to Exchanges, the Alex Martin podcast. Today we're excited to be joined by two lovely blokes with loads of experience, plenty of stories and deep insight into the world of property. Probate Auction's very own Nick and Russell. First question, are you two best friends?
No.
Oh really, like that?
Definitely not.
How long have you known each other?
20 years?
20 years, 20 plus years.
Like top five?
No,
I don't-
really. For many years, it was just a client customer relationship.
Did you like
client
each other?
Yeah, we
Not
do like each other.
particularly.
It
You
was
look like you're doing the
great
COVID
start,
6
man.
meters here.
Russ was the auctioneer at Savills. He was on the auction team at Savills, and we were clients of Savills, and that's how we know each other.
And then over time became friendly.
Yeah.
Nights out.
Still only friendly, yeah?
Do it a bit more than friends now.
Yeah, well, we're business partners now, so so
Yeah.
it's a bit different. But it's more. Look, lives are in different places, so we're both family guys and whatever else. And so, how much do you really go out when you've got 4 kids and whatever else? So,
True. Why are you social distancing, can I ask?
Oh, I didn't really want to cuddle him on the
Still
couch.
up a little bit.
Do we
Are
want
they
to
nice in
cuddle?
the frame there, Jermaine? Do they look? Are they all right in it?
Man,
It looks like you're both-
I thought it'd be a little bit weird if we sat touching each other.
It looks like you're both like
Trying to-
waiting in
Come
the
sit like that.
lobby for a job interview, and you're so like far away
There
from each
you
Going
other.
for the same job.
Yeah, that's what I mean. So, okay, we like
But
to
to be
start-
fair, with Pride View, they looked a little bit
Squashed.
Yeah,
Squashed.
They were quite
Yeah.
cosy.
Do we look squashed?
I
feel
squashed here. It's not like it's not like a sit-up sofa though. It's like
That's what I mean. It's a
do you know what I
slouching
mean? It's
sort
a-
of.
I'm too tiny. You can't feel squashed with me sitting in the middle.
You must feel squashed next to me and Joe.
we like to start from the very, very beginning, especially with Al, the face of the company. Do you want to? Who did you know first? Who did you meet first?
I know Russ.
Yeah,
I know Russ
it's many
relatively
years.
well. Our paths have crossed over the years.
And how did they first cross?
Go on. I know the first deal.
Whoa! Slow down.
Okay, is that one of your questions?
Well, yeah. Moving on.
I'm trying to think the first time ever. Oh, was when you were working in London Bridge
maybe with Terry Mack.
with
yeah.
Terry Mack? Yeah,
Yeah, probably was
And that's when I first ever met you.
Okay.
I remember. Yeah, it was I think it was Terry's birthday, wasn't it?
Were you at that?
I
Okay,
wasn't
no.
at that, but I think I,
can't remember
might
the
join
pie.
you later. But
But I know you're very friendly over the years with Sam Seller.
yep,
I know Sam Seller very
course.
well, so
Yeah, we have
that's how we
mutual
know each
friends.
other. And we've shared a beautiful stag together at Sam's
and
stag.
to a certain extent, shared my wife.
Oh yeah,
She did
oh
work
my
for you.
God, I forgot she worked
Oh
for
yeah,
us.
I was,
Wow, yeah, that's a few years back, but she did. She was
Yeah.
great.
Loose definition on shared.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, me and Alex have. Yeah,
And then when did Nick come into play?
So I haven't known Alex very long at all. I think we probably met for the first time in Cannes a few weeks ago.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah,
I've known of Alex. I'm sure he's probably known of me as well. We've sort of not in the same space, but we have dabbled into that space, into what he does. But yeah, really, we sat down and had a few drinks out in Cannes a few months ago, back in March.
You look like brothers.
Thank you.
is that just down to our height?
And the glasses.
Yeah, he's got cooler glasses than me.
Yeah.
Could be true.
Okay. And so you two have known each other for a long, long time. Whose idea was it to get probate auctions going?
Yeah, so that was me. So I like to think of myself as a sort of, I'm in property, but I'm quite entrepreneurial with what I do, and the sort of my brain thinks slightly differently and throw a few ideas around. And I'm sure you'll ask me various questions in terms of kind of my history and what we've been up to, but I just decided I needed another direction. I was getting not bored of what I was doing, but I just kind of needed something new in my life. And so sort of came up with the concept with a couple of guys in the office for an auction business supporting the probate industry, and Russell was the right person to work with, given that we'd known each other a long time, and he had another business which was, say, failing, but it was kind of moving in the wrong direction. And I needed somebody. I could take care of the sort of business side of it and understand the client side and the relationships. And having been a client of auctions for the last 20 years plus, I kind of felt that I could bring that to the table, but I needed someone operationally to run the actual auction side and the business.
And he was
That's
the
where I
perfect
came
fit.
in. Yeah, well,
Perfect
obviously
fit,
there
yeah.
was a level of trust and respect from over the years, dealing with each other for, like I said, many years. And it ended up being the perfect fit.
Do you want to pitch the business? That's probably one of your questions.
That is exactly one of my questions.
Yeah.
Just move the mic a little bit closer, especially for the pitch. It's very, very important.
Very
Who's going to take the pitch then? Who's going to explain what probate auctions is?
Look, the pitch is quite simple. That the auction world is auctions have been taken over by traders, and my history, I've been a trader for the last 20 years. That's what I've done. But when I sort of looked around and looked at the properties that were kind of out there, a lot of it was second-hand stock. It was the auction houses were selling a lot of properties where they've been on the market, may have been on the market for a day, may have been on the market for 12 months. And it's mainly those properties that are making up kind of 50-60% of auction catalogues. And my business and what we'd always done was basically bring property to the market that had never been to market. So we were able to source opportunities, and I felt that if I could bring some of that to the table and build relationships, and it went through various different channels. It went through, shall we use data from my existing business, or shall we sort of build corporate relationships? But I felt there was a gap in the market in the probate world where they weren't really using auctions.
Can you just explain what probate is, please?
Yeah. Probate is the process that you need to apply for when somebody passes away. And you have to obtain probate before you can sell the property. Grant the probate.
So, stupid question maybe. Do you rely on people dying that own properties in order to make money?
The
that's quite a natural
business
thing.
The business is geared towards supporting the probate sector, which is it's a pretty big industry. I mean, there's probably 100,000 properties a year that are falling into probate.
Yeah.
95% of which go through conventional agency. The other 5% possibly go to auction or are retained by family.
And so I would just say, from what we've seen over the years, a large percentage of that is people being taken advantage of because of the situation surrounding the property, the condition of the property. The probate properties tend to be relatively run down, dated properties in need of modernisation.
How do you mean taking advantage of them?
By unscrupulous agents basically selling them on the cheap to their local friendly property person. And as Nick alluded to earlier, 3 weeks later, that same property, where does it appear? In an auction, being sold by the property trader who's picked it up for cheap from the agent.
And who do you think are your main buyers who come to your room and buy from you?
It's completely spread.
It's completely spread. So, for example, we've got a property in next week's auction over in Amersham, and I went down to the viewing yesterday. Every single type of buyer you can imagine was at this property, from local tradesmen in their builder's gear, young couples looking for their first home, families, investors. The full spectrum of buyers tend to be these properties appeal to them.
And when you launched the business, I'm sorry, I'm looking at your questions, I'm interested. When you launched the business, did you start with an absolutely clear database and it's just pure exposure and marketing, or is it you had people already buying? How did you make that leap?
On in terms of the buyer's side of things, it's a combination. I think goes towards making a successful auctioneer. Is creating a following for your business of people who regularly, because there are auction groupies, I'd call them.
Okay.
They like to look through every catalogue that comes out every month from every auctioneer, and you build a following. So I'd already built a following from my previous business that allowed us to start with a sizable database in the many thousands. That very quickly grew because that stamp of probate attracts a lot of people. People are very interested in these properties because, as Nick said earlier, they are fresh to the market, this virgin stock that usually hasn't changed hands for a long time, 30, 40, some of these properties are same family ownership for 40, 50, 60 years. So when it finally comes to market, it tends to attract interest. So all of that, coupled with all of the standard marketing practices, Rightmove, Zoopla, on the market, specialist auction portals, along with all the other routes, social media, print advertising, we push ourselves out there. We were very keen from day one to make sure we were all over socials, LinkedIn, and we were putting the message out there that we're here.
And personally, did you have an issue when you went to set this up?
Yeah.
You said you already had the following, so that's you taking clients or a database with you, or is it?
It's
How
more,
did that work?
It's more the buyer database.
Okay.
So client-wise, so my old business was my business.
Okay.
So there was no issue about bringing people
Got it.
across. But also just you tend to find. I mean, I'll speak for Nick first of all, but Nick is over the years has been quite a big name in the auction world.
Yeah.
As in, it's quite got a very good reputation, as Nick said, from some of his other businesses that were involved in auction trading. He built up a good name for himself. I obviously have been in the auction world from coming on for 25 years now. Spent 16 of those years at probably the number one auctioneer in the country over those years.
Shall we say it?
Up to
Savills?
now, Savills.
Yeah.
Say that now.
But and over those years you build up a personal following as well, and a name in the industry. It's amazing the amount of calls that we've received over the last year going, is that Russell Taylor that used to work at Savills? Is that who did it?
I've
they're
seen
all
this guy come to life.
Yeah.
Since we launched this business, I've seen a complete change in person. When he gets a phone call from somebody that he's not spoken to for 15 years, and they call him out the blue, and his face lights up because he's alive again. And I think what part of the problem was in his old business, I think it was a scenario where he'd kind of during COVID launched his own auction house, and having spent 20 years in corporate businesses and whatever else, corporate auction houses, built his own business that kind of shot up straight away because a few of the clients kind of followed him. But they're not, a lot of the sort of trader clients, they're not loyal to the auction houses. So whilst they might be brilliant and you might get a great year out of them, all of a sudden they start looking for other auction houses, and before you know it, your 100 lots an auction is coming down to kind of 30, 20 and whatever else, and you're scrapping around for lots. And I think you yourself. I think you kind of
lose a bit of your mojo.
Yeah, lost. And I've seen your mojo kind of over the last kind of 6 to 8 months really just kind of just go again.
I've seen your mojo. That was
that
was a statement.
Let's not talk about that.
I heard that you never answer your phone.
That's quite a well-known fact.
Disappearing, goes on the missing list.
Apparently, you're always ill. It's what I'm hearing from a source.
Nick now calls me sick note, or Darren Anderson. Yeah.
Good player.
Actually, you look a bit like him.
Darren Anderson. No,
Southgate,
I get a lot of Gareth
Oh, yeah,
Southgate.
you
Like
do.
serious Gareth Southgate.
Yeah, you do look like a football manager. You just look like you'd be maybe like a Bundesliga 2 sort of manager.
Yeah, I wouldn't take that.
The hardest part of the business was actually sort of really getting into the clients, the people, not individuals, but really trying to work the corporate clients for them to feed us opportunities or feed us the properties to sell. And what we found was, and I kind of naively went into the business kind of thinking that everybody would just be like, wow, we're just going to give you loads of property. And I quickly realised that actually it was a massive educational piece. And I think we had to go out and educate the legal sector and the sort of corporate asset managers and whatever else, because they'd never really considered auction as a route of exit. And what I was bringing was that sort of real client side experience. Like my lots, the stuff that I used to sell at auction was always the best auction lots. We would always achieve. I mean, I remember one particular trader, I won't mention any names, but he would come to us having sold 80, 90 lots at an auction. And he would say, I have to sell 80, 90 to make what you make out of 5. But that business, and you're going to meet with those guys next week, was very different. It's very specialist. It really helps and unlocks real complicated sort of probate scenarios in the main. And most of those properties would never go to market. So sort of still involved in that business, but launching this business, I didn't feel conflicted. I didn't feel like I was taking potential business away from that business to feed into this business.
Did you have anyone give you a hard time over it? Because considering you're so embedded in that auction world, and then there you go, you're coming on with a new concept.
Yeah, not really. I think the biggest obstacle was actually juggling me and my other partner, who, kind of. I spent the first 6 months setting this up, kind of stuck between kind of doing, let's say, my day job, which was running my other businesses and being involved in the day-to-day of that, and trying to get this off the ground. and found myself doing a lot in kind of after hours and whatever else. It was only kind of once we started to get some traction that I said, you know what, I need to spend kind of 95% of my time on this business and 5% on the other business. It's probably more like 90-10 now, but it's I'm probably enjoying this section of my career probably more than at any other point in my career.
That's nice.
And I can't quite figure out why that is. I just think it's just exciting at the moment. And it was just something a bit different. And you know,
And you're saying it's exciting. So has your expectations been exceeded? How it's grown and what you're doing?
yeah, I mean, my initial, and this is where my naivety possibly came in. I thought I would jump in and I'd be able to ping 100 lot catalogue together in a matter of weeks, and that didn't happen. I think our first catalogue launch was scrapping around. We managed to get 7 lots. And we didn't actually kind of advertise the fact that we really had this auction. We kind of kept it as kind of, let's say, more of a test case auction, make sure everything was working, didn't kind of tell everyone, oh, look, the catalogue's launched and whatever else. But then we kind of followed through a month later with a sort of 50 lot catalogue and then a 45 lot catalogue and then a 55 lot catalogue. And that's kind of the level that we've been consistent with ever since.
Every month?
Every pretty much 6 weeks.
Right.
And I'm pretty sure, and I don't know this for fact, as a matter of fact, you can probably confirm, but I think we've pretty much sold everything that we've offered to auction, give or take a handful of properties. So that may not be necessarily under the hammer. It may have been post-auction. It may have been before the auction when the catalogue's launched. But I'm pretty sure we've almost sold everything that we've offered to date.
And do they have to be probate?
No. So when we set the business up as Probate.Auction, we thought, well, there's a lot of opportunities that we were starting to turn stuff down because they hadn't fallen into that sort of specific probate category. So we tied in another brand called Resi.Auction, and the 2 auctions make up one catalogue. They're identified by their colour. So in our actual auction, if it's yellow, it's probate. If it's pink, it's non-probate. But we've not actually really pushed that business out. It's generically attracted a couple of housing association clients, some LPA receivers, a few traders, but we're trying to do it very clean. So we're very strict in terms of special conditions. They were one of the things that I was conscious of as a trader that I didn't want. I was starting to frustrate me that a lot of the traders were really manipulating the sales. So they might sell a piece of land for 10 grand, but then the buyers unknowingly got 10 or 15,000 pounds of costs on top. And I didn't really want to be party to that. So we set a level that we felt was where the fees for our auction are paid by the buyer, but it's not unusual for auction for the buyers to pay the fee. In fact, if you're a housing association or the NHS or the Met Police or the local authority, they always input a buyer's fee within the lots that they're selling at auction. It was just about making sure that it was a fixed amount and it wasn't taking the piss.
Do you tend to, because we've started to do quite a bit of Savills, putting stuff in auction, do you tend to sell like, a lot before auction, before it gets to the room, or?
You can answer
It's
this.
funny, so look, me being the auctioneer, I want to have the best lots to be offered up on the rostrum. They're the most exciting for me to do. You get these crazy bidding wars. This property I was down at yesterday, it's a great example actually. So we've got it in the auction with a guide price of £500,000. The reserve is obviously within 10%, just above the 500,000. This property had previously been on the market for the last 6 months for £650,000 with no traction, couldn't sell it, a couple of offers, fell out of bed because they couldn't get their mortgages, etc., etc. It's charitable beneficiaries of this property. This property has flown out. We now have, there's been 187 legal pack downloads. At the viewing we had on Saturday, 88 people showed up. The viewing I was at yesterday, about 45 people showed up. Our sort of payment window to take part in the auction opened today, and we've had, I think, already 8 people have put their money down to take part in the auction for that lot. We're most likely going to end up with 30 or 40 paid up registered bidders for that lot.
We've already
received offer, and that's what we're coming to in terms of accepting offers. So we've received offers now prior to auction of over 600,000 for this house, And on the one hand, the charities are like, well, that's quite, we would have taken that if it was on the open market. But my advice to them has been, no, leave this in the room. This has got the potential that it could go north of 700 at next week's auction.
Yeah, you got everyone bidding up against each other.
That's it. Is that you put people under a pressurized situation like an auction, and that's one of the key things that.
So what did the market miss previously, and what's there? What's the magic on that one?
And this is why I've always loved auctions, and always what I've done since I left university was. It concentrates people's mind and puts them in a pressurized situation where they have to make a decision. And they sit there and they think, well, if we don't decide to go for this, we're missing out on this. We better do it.
Look how many other people are interested.
Look at all these other people at the viewing. It's clearly a good lot. Let's get involved.
And how
It's
difficult
psychology.
is that, the shift away from being in the room? I mean, you said you've been doing it for 25 years.
Yeah.
I presume the last 5 years have been so different
Correct,
from an auctioneer's
yeah,
perspective.
yeah.
How's that shifted?
It's funny. So we were in an event a few weeks ago. There was a big conference for most of the 400 of the largest charities in the UK and for their legacy teams, and we decided to showcase our auction within their event. So I conducted a live streamed auction online, but we filmed it and we produced it within their conference so they could all sit and watch, and it gave me the vibes of being back in the auction room, even though they weren't there bidding because I'm taking bids off the camera,
Just a live audience.
but just having a live audience, the buzz of it. The first lot, the hammer went down, they all gave a massive round of applause, and I miss it. As much as there is huge benefits to where the auction world has gone, it's also lost a bit of that sparkle from not having a room. But maybe that's just me being as a client.
I love it.
Yeah, but even I watch
and
it.
also on a business sense, it's a huge cost saving not having to hold an auction the way we used to do. It used to, I mean, at Savills, the auction day used to cost us upwards of £50,000 to hold each auction. Suddenly that's been stripped away.
During your experience doing this, the in-person auctions, there must have been some pretty funny experiences, no?
Some very funny experiences.
Any people that won an auction and sort of tried to do a runner or
numerous. There'd be at least 2 or 3 every single auction. So some of the best stories, my personal best one was probably somebody buying a property, realizing they'd actually bid on the wrong lot. They were there to buy the following lot, but had lost track of what lot was that and just started putting their hand up. Hammers come down to.
Is there not a picture of what is getting?
Yeah, it's all up there. Exactly. You'd think it's quite obvious, but no. It wasn't. And when this chap was then taken through to the contract room to go and sign the papers and hand over his cheque and everything else, it dawned on him he'd bought the wrong property. I happened to be walking past the contract room when I see a guy running out of that room, one of my staff members shouting, "Oi, he's doing a runner." Instinct took over and I started chasing this guy. The auction was being held in Berkeley Square in central London. I ended up chasing this guy, me being rather unfit and rather unhealthy, couldn't catch him. He's managed to flag down a taxi, jumped in the taxi, and just as I've caught up to the taxi, started pulling off. He's then turned around in the rear window and given me the finger.
So then what?
And that's it. He's gone. Nothing.
But don't you have his details?
No, because back in those days there was no pre-registration. There was no. So that's another key difference. I'll come on to some other funny story in a second. But one of the key positives of moving the auctions to the way they're held now online is everyone has to pre-register, and the way we operate is they have to. We put a hold on their card for a certain amount of money, so we know they're
Little
good
deposit.
For it. Essentially, yeah, but we don't actually take the money. We ring fence it, and if they're not the successful bidder, we just lift the like when you check in a hotel. And
if they're successful, they exchange straight away, right?
If they're successful, the exchange is effected immediately. We've got their money. Paperwork's done at our end electronically, and it's all done really easy. But back in the day, it wasn't like that. So numerous times me and my colleagues would chase people down the road. One of my colleagues chased one all the way to Hyde Park.
Surely you'd get security.
But we did in the rooms. The problem was you cannot fit. Technically, it was pointless us chasing them because even if I caught up with the guy,
What are you going to do?
what am I going to do? I
Drag
can't
him back.
physically.
Yeah.
I can't physically drag. It's you know. I remember we get the police involved. It's a civil matter. They're not interested.
You could just be like, buy it.
Well, that was one of the
work.
things we said. I mean, one of the best stories of someone purchasing the wrong lot was there was a real old character who'd been around the auction world for a long time. And he was, to be fair, he was a terrible client. He never even sold any properties. But my boss at the time used to love him. They got on. And he'd always invite him to the auction. We used to hold a client's lunch during the auction for anyone selling properties during the day. With wine, proper lunch in a West End hotel, wine, everything. This guy liked to drink. One of these lunches, he made his way through about 2 or 3 bottles of wine. Do you remember a chap called Gino?
He did not drink 3 bottles.
He went through 3 bottles of wine over a 45-minute hour lunch.
I think he
He
was
might have
from
had-
Cricklewood.
Yes, that's the
Yeah,
one.
he stitched me up once upon a time.
Okay,
for a
so he was a
bottleneck.
character. He was a
He was
weird
an
guy.
alcoholic.
Alcoholic character. Anyway, he then stumbled back into the auction room. Obviously, the auction's taking place, and it just so happened that as he's walked through the doors of the auction room, we're starting a brand new lot. So the auctioneer, my boss at the time, lot 15 is da-da-da-da-da-da, whatever it was. Who's here to start me off? No hands go up. The doors fly open. Mr. Gino walks down the middle aisle, looks up. I'll have a bit of that. Puts his hand up. So it was a genuine bid. Obviously, the auctioneer had no idea the guy was rather well lubricated, and no other bids were placed. It happened so that as auctioneers, we'll always try and be a bit cheeky, and the first number we offer out to people will probably way in excess of the reserve price. And so this property might have been £500,000 reserve, but the auctioneer will start off going, anyone here at 550? This guy's put his hand up, no one else has bid, boom, the hammer's come down. Then a whole protracted legal situation came out
he
of
didn't have
it.
any money.
He'd had no money.
Surely he was too
Turned out
drunk
he
to
was
run
living
away.
at home with his mum at the time, even though
wow.
he was acting as a big time property trader, and it was all and it was just hilarious watching it, trying to unravel that situation.
So whilst the buzz has gone a little bit, at least you don't have to deal with
yeah,
shysters
and,
like that
and
all the time.
the worst parts about the old auction days were that it was the one day when the public and also your clients to an extent got to see you in person.
They won't get you on
it
the
had
phone,
some
that's
good
for sure.
things
Yeah.
because they could never get me on the phone.
Yeah.
So, but it had some good points, meeting clients face to face, etc., etc. It did have some bad points where you'd have people who had driven you nuts over the last 3 weeks trying to either buy the property prior or do whatever. And they would be there and they would literally be grabbing a piece of you. Oh, Mr. Russell, can I speak to you? Can I speak to you? And it would get rather frustrating, shall we say.
From a client's perspective, it was a good networking piece.
Yeah.
You bumped into a lot of people that you now don't see.
I often hear like the good old days, the old, where everyone knew each other in the room. People would lean on different people. You're not bidding on that one, and
Yeah, but I think
you are on
towards
that.
the end of this sort of in-room auction, it had started to change.
It had
hadn't
done,
Yeah.
correct.
You'd had to have your pre-bidding card, so you had to be a registered bidder beforehand.
Okay.
And it started to become more structured.
Also, the demographics of the you're right. Back in the early days, the good old days, there was a lot of they called them auction
boys
rings.
club,
It was an old boys club. Oh, what are you here? Oh, I'm here for the house in Ilford. Me too. Tell you what, I'll give you a couple of grand. Don't bid on it. Let me have this one, and the next one in Ilford
Pride
you
of you
get.
saying the same thing.
And
Yeah.
it's
very
how,
controlled, yeah.
And my
it
old
was all-
boss, Terry
don't-
Mack, that's
I
how he
don't-
started. He was
Exactly.
a postman, and then he started in the auction rooms with, he'd lean on some people, shall we say, and do deals with other people. But he made his money.
What's the ambition? Do you want to build the company up and sell it, or do you want to compete?
My ambition is to grow it into the largest auction house in the country, and I think we can achieve that probably within the next 18 to 24 months.
Well,
That's the plan. Whether we get there or not, but I'm pretty confident we will.
who's your main competitor? Or do you not want to give a shout out?
It's not so much that I don't feel we've created something that's quite unique. So what really appealed, just going back actually to the start of the conversation, when Nick first rang me, said, I've got this idea, come and have a chat. what massively appealed to me was the niche and the specific nature of the auctioneers. So what we discussed earlier, the barriers to entering auction, as in to run your own auction house, were stripped away when everything went online, because suddenly the cost base of holding auctions, etc., had come down dramatically. So what you found over the last 5 to 8 years, really, every week there's a new auctioneer opening up. I think I'd say 99% of them last 6 months before they shut down, because it's such a niche and nuanced world, the auction world. And also, when you pop up, a new auctioneer pops up that's just an auctioneer, what differentiates them from the big boys? Nothing. You know, they offer the same thing, but without the coverage and without the spread and without the branding and everything else that the big boys have. So this idea, having a specific type of property that you're selling at the auction, really, I thought, yeah, people will sit up and take notice of that. And it's been true. The amount of phone calls I've had from a lot of these old faces and old people calling and going, what a brilliant idea, just to focus on a certain type of property. And weirdly enough, actually, this week, another new auctioneer has popped up, and they've obviously maybe taken a bit of inspiration from us, because they've got a focus as well on a certain type of property.
Okay.
It's actually a type of an HMO auctioneer, purely to sell HMO style properties.
Not a bad idea.
Yeah, not a bad idea at all. You know, it may be that's the way that the auction world evolves into, having specific auctioneers who sell specific types.
I got approached from someone that wants to do a land auction.
Yeah, you know,
I think one of the things that was really important to me, and this was trying to do things the right way. Having been a client of a few auction houses over the years, and 2 main auction houses that we've been with for a long time through my other business, I didn't want to come into the auction world and step on anybody's toes. You know, got good relationships. Those people were friends and whatever else, and therefore it had to be niche in order to essentially win business that they weren't winning, and that was sort of fundamental. And when we sort of went down the process of kind of before, it was actually slightly before and also during sort of working with Russell, I went to see the other auction houses that I work with, and I gave them an opportunity to join me in the business, to see if they wanted to do it with us. And one wanted to, but couldn't. They're part of a franchise, and the franchisor wouldn't give them the green light. The other one was Savills, and I felt like I should do the right thing by them, and ultimately go and see them and see whether they want to do something with us. And they kind of did. They tried to steer it towards us creating a sort of feeder business that sort of fed into them. And I didn't see any sort of long-term picture with that, and whether the route is to go towards an exit of this business eventually. A feeder business isn't going to be exitable, whereas an auction business with recurring income is likely to be. And actually, that's probably the one thing with Savills, independently, or the actual people that work there, I get on very well with a lot of them, but they started to call some of our clients. They were downloading our legal packs. They were trying to. I think they thought that we would sort of trickle into the market, and we hit with a pretty big impact. We kind of went out. We went hard and fast. We sponsored every probate event and charity sector event over the last 12 months as kind of head sponsor. We kind of made everybody know that we were here. We were there to support them. We've been out to see hundreds of people. We've taken whole teams of solicitor firms and sort of done sort of pitches with them and kind of explain the process. Yeah, it became that's what I said before. It became an educational piece. We realised very quickly that we had to educate the legal sector mainly and the charity sector to understand auctions, understand the power of auctions, what does well at auction, why they should sell at auction, why they're still fluffing their lines essentially when they put a really run down property and they place it in with the local agent, and either that property is being sold super quickly or it's been overpriced because the agent's kind of overvalued it, been whittled down over time, and then 9 months, 12 months later they've still not sold it. And so giving them the opportunity of auctions is an outlet for them, and an outlet they hadn't really considered. And so my sort of goal for this business is, it may not be the largest auction house. I mean, it'd be very nice, but as long as we're the best, and it could be, half the size of the largest, but if we're providing the best service, and I'm really hard on this, that I want to make sure that everybody that we deal with appreciates what we're putting in for them, whether they're buyer or seller, that we're going the extra mile for them.
It's probably one of the key differentials, if you like, and it's where Nick's client side experience comes into play. Is we like to see ourselves as a bit more than just an auctioneer. So, situation today came across where someone sent us an appraisal, and there was some issues that they were struggling with it was to do with a cladded building that had cladding on it, and whether you needed an EWS1 form for the fire regs and all the rest of it or not. Now, most auctioneers would just do a valuation on that, send it back, and that would be it. We like to go the extra mile. Nick provided some immediate advice, which was then followed up to a call to a surveyor that we know to find out what our client actually needed and actually required. We've then gone back to the client with that further advice. They were over the moon. They were like, thank you so much. You've gone above and beyond what we'd normally expect from. And that's the key to what we're trying to do is trying to bring a bit more
the key ingredient is essentially that Russell's got 25 years of auction experience, and I've got 25 years of buying and selling property and being a client of auction houses.
What type of properties?
Residential, rundown, derelict houses.
So where do you come into play on this?
Well, we don't really. We're on a learning curve ourselves. There may be future angles. As I sit here, it is like a dream team. You've got the guy with the passion who's always been at the front and knows the market. But and then you've come along, seen a niche, and basically giving you an opportunity to rebrand and refocus with someone with real business acumen behind them.
Correct.
And it's an absolute, honestly, it's a dream team as I sit here and I'm sitting here learning.
Yeah, same.
I mean, our relationships with Savills, and that's down to you as well, because you were at Savills, and we're finding, as a business model, it's fantastic. We get the national exposure and we put the heat under the building that it needs to get sold, where these buildings will sit there for quite a while. But this is within the faith market, and sometimes these guys need it, and they will now, rather than sit there trying to get finance on your normal basis, they'll go and get a bridge because they desperately don't want to lose. And it would never have happened, and we give certainty that way. And maybe we should be bringing that business to you.
Is that something that's in the scope for you? Is commercial?
Yeah, we're not looking to sort of pigeonhole ourselves. I think as I said, we didn't want to step on anybody's toes, but we're now an established brand, and that brand is developing on a daily basis. And whether that's because we end up going down the road of commercial property, or whether that's because we go down the route of creating sort of more of a timed auction platform in addition to the other things that we're doing. We've got 2 or 3 other brands that we will release at some point, but I think it's also about trying not to do too much and sort of staying in the current lane right now.
Can you expand on those?
I was going to say, your wife must go mad.
My head is constantly filled with ideas, and you'll sit and talk with Ben in one of your next interviews. But that business was an example of me sitting in bed one night and came up with, I was watching a TV program and I was on a website and sort of just put 2 and 2 together and ended up launching a property company called Uspot Property, which was, Ben will talk to you about, which was rewarding the public for reporting long-term empty and derelict homes. And that's been super fun, and I love being involved in that business. I'm still involved in that business, but actually I felt I could do more. I felt that there is this huge market of probate property that just isn't being dealt with correctly. And my other companies, I think they deal with the stuff that they buy. Whilst they buy very well, those properties would never see the light of day without their input. But the stuff that we're dealing with is stuff that ordinarily would have gone to the estate agents, and then ordinarily would have ended up with the traders. And we're probably the enemy of those traders, because we're taking the business away, and it's now going into our auction. It's starting to. I mean, however big we get, there'll still be those opportunities happening. I mean, it's we're scratching the surface, and even if we ended up selling 10,000 properties a year, we're still scratching the surface of how many properties are sold a year.
With the properties you deal with, do you often deal with buildings that people didn't even know that they owned?
All the time.
Really?
And how do you win that business? Because notoriously, probate properties could be 12 months in probate from start to finish. Are you dealing with that time lag, or are you getting at a point where it's been through probate and then it's
a mix.
Really?
I mean, we
There's
want to be
different
there's
stages,
different
isn't there?
stages. Either we are supporting the asset managers and the solicitors and whoever else and the legacy teams in the charities.
Yeah.
That's a massive push for us, by the way. The legacy teams is something we're really focused on, and something that when we did that conference, it's opened a huge amount of doors for us.
Holding that live auction in front of those
200
delegates
delegates that actually came and physically watched it has massively paved the way for us to really sort of crystallize that market. But it's there's so many different stages. So it could be front end. We'd like to be front end on everything where they come to us, whether it's a solicitor or the legacy team or the asset management firms and whatever else come to us and say, right, we've got this case, the property needs to be sold. What do you think? Or it's going to be the back end of the process where they've been on the market for 6, 9, 12, 18 months and it hasn't sold. Well, it hasn't. The reason something doesn't sell, it's always price related. There's no other reason. And there's an awful lot of that. There's a lot of overvaluing going on in the market, and
There's
it doesn't matter what we say.
So there's also with that. I was going to touch on that point. There's also a lot of difficulty in the fact that somebody inherits a house, their late mother's passed away, whatever, and their cousin's neighbour is in property, and they've had a conversation where they've said, "Oh God, you've got that house. That'll be worth like $500,000, that or whatever." Just throwing it out there, and those figures get in a person who's not involved in property day to day. They get that figure stuck in their head. So then when we come along at auction and say, "Well, the reserve needs to be 400,000 or whatever it might be," that's one of our biggest battles is persuading people that these properties are only worth what someone's willing to pay for it. It's not worth what you think it's
agents.
worth.
Sometimes
It doesn't matter what we
yeah.
say.
Yeah, it's irrelevant
If you've got
it's
£1
worth
million
what
pound-
someone's willing to
Yeah,
pay for
if
it.
you've got
Yeah.
a million, if you've got a house that's worth £500,000, and the agents come in and they valued it at 550 or 600 grand, whatever the case may be, and that's fine. That expectation's been set at that level. Now, I could come in and tell you that property's worth 50 grand, and I want to put it in my auction at 50 grand. It's going to find its market level. It's going to find its price. It's probably going to end up selling for more than the local agent valuation.
You're definitely going to
The
generate
lower
some
you can
interest.
guide
And
for,
you
the
can-
higher price you're going to
correct.
achieve. But it doesn't matter what we say, because ultimately the market will determine the price.
And that's
With the
why
agents,
sorry, go on.
they set the price, and then they have to start working the price down if they've overvalued it. And that happens over a concerted period of time. I mean, there are some of the big sort of corporate agents that they work off of a sort of internal motto, which is kind of get it in, get it down, get it sold. With auction, you don't need to do that, but not every property is right for auction
I
equally.
think that's similar to our sector a little bit. When we're selling religious buildings, our aim is to get people through the door, and that will drive the value.
And that will drive the
and
value.
that's
Yeah.
fairly common in.
Yeah, because I imagine in your sectors, sometimes valuing one of those buildings on your side of the fence is bloody difficult.
We-
You'll
oh,
say.
yeah,
They're so
it's-
weird and wonderful and different styles and everything else.
A phrase I use every day. It's a fine line between it being a white elephant or a unicorn.
Yeah,
If you don't
yeah.
get it right, but you
Yeah.
only need two buyers, and
Correct.
it might be that I walk into any F1 building, I kind of start at 300 quid a square foot,
Yeah,
and then it's up or down depending on location, condition, size, that sort of stuff. But these buyers, they buy for legacy,
Yeah.
and actually, if they really want it, they don't care what it'll
That's
cost.
what they
can
can
overpay
It's
for it.
more
And
like a trophy
yeah,
building, isn't
absolutely.
it?
And it might be Red Book, RICS
Says
valuation,
X.
it's worth 2 million.
Yeah.
But I can get 4
Yeah.
if I have, particularly if it's a Hindu and a Muslim group going toe to toe. That
Yeah.
all sense
People don't
goes
like
out
to
the
lose,
window.
right? So
Yeah.
it's the same
And that's
with the
the same with
auctions.
the
auctions,
auctions, exactly that. Yeah.
We had a property in the last auction, which, to be honest with you, it was worth 85 grand. That's what it was, and the bidding slowed at 8, and everyone dropped out other than two
This is
parties.
a funny one.
And so the bidding goes down to £1,000. I'm pretty sure another auctioneer would have dropped the hammer at 85,000. Russell kind of pressed it a little bit longer, and you ended up getting one of the guys coming in for another £1,000. And we ended up getting ended up being another £57,000 of single £1,000 bids.
Took bloody ages.
And that's kind of quite an important thing, because
But-
depending on who the auctioneer is whether or not they're trigger happy and ready to pop that gavel down, or whether someone's going to really sort of hold out and sort of wait and just kind of take their time with it, try and drag out every last penny. I think Russell does that.
Yeah.
Is that the buzz, Russ? Is that it?
Yeah, I
In the
mean,
room
when you
doing
get
it?
a lot like that, and you get two guys
They didn't want to lose.
They don't want to lose. And now I always tell people, how hark to back in the old days of the auction room. The amount of times in my early days, one of my jobs was jumping off the stage before I was the auctioneer, taking the winning bidder and walking them through to the contract room. And the amount of times you would walk someone along and they'd go, "Oh my God, I've gone £30,000 over what I was meant to bid for that."
That's their fault.
Correct. But by the time you've got them in the room and they've signed up, they'll be saying, "But you know what? I've got the property now. It's mine, and I'm going to walk out this room, and I now own a property." And as an auctioneer, you'd always make the old jokes. Go on, make one more bid, one more £5,000. Just hold back on the kitchen, what you spend on the kitchen a bit, or put, don't do the garden so nicely, or whatever. But and it comes back to that whole thing about psychology of. Once they're involved, and I always say it, for us as auctioneers, our job is getting them to be registered and lined up to bid at the auction. Once they're in and they've put their money down and they're registered, anything's possible, because this human psychology takes over. And you used to see it in real life in the rooms, because say it'd be me bidding against you, Alex, and the two guys are looking at each other and just going, "You're not having it, I'm having it." And you'd get that.
Sorry, mate. Do you so are you disappointed when you do the deal before the room?
Yes,
you are.
So
yeah?
Not disappointed. Look, at the end of the day, we're here to get the best price and keep our clients happy.
Do you remember our first deal was a building in Peckham? Yeah,
Peckham
and
High
you
Street.
had two people.
I remember it well. We sold it prior, didn't we?
Prior to the room, but they were in different rooms trying to sign the contract, and the price was going up even before the room on that day.
That is quite. They used to be great stories when you would have essentially an auction before the auction.
Yeah.
So I remember one really, really good one was when. It was an amazing building. It was in Chigwell, and it was in Repton Park in Chigwell, and it was this old water tower that was a complete shell.
I know that.
And it's now just by the gym, and essentially they couldn't sell it anywhere. It was a receivership sale. Come to auction, was really popular. Received an offer. These receivers like, "Yeah, take it. We want it. We don't care. We just want to sell this. Get it off our books." Yeah, offers accepted. Come on. After I've accepted that offer and told the person, because in those days they'd make their way to the office and physically sign the papers and hand over the money, another call comes in making the same offer for the same property, different party. So I'm like, I explained the situation. Look, another party has made that offer. They're on their way to the office. However, the way we operate is it's a first come, first served basis. If you can beat that person to the office, it can be yours. Okay, great. They'll both be here in roughly an hour. So I'm thinking, right, let's see who shows up first, and there'll be one disappointed party. Get a call from reception. Come down, there's somebody here to see you. As the lift doors is open, I can see two people sat on the sofa in the reception. I'm like, "Oh, is someone here to purchase lot 15 and sign up prior?" They've both looked at me. Both parties had got there at exactly the same time.
Oh.
So I then had to take one into one room, one into another, and then physically walk back and forth going, "He's gone up £3,000. Do you want to match it? Or I'll go up higher." And until one of them dropped out.
Wow.
Have you seen what's happened to that?
Yeah.
Water tower?
I got
lovely,
it.
look.
It's amazing. It was a footballer ended up
Really?
renting it.
As a client, I don't like offers prior, because it sets a level of expectation.
Yeah.
I'd rather just wait and see what happens on the day. And there's been, I remember, actually it was one of your auctions at Savills. It was some guys come up, religious from a guy has come up to us and said, "Oh, is that one of your properties?" Yeah. Oh, it's going to do so well. Everyone's interested in it. At the time, it wasn't digital, so you didn't have any legal packs and whatever else. And he's made us up the reserve. So we're thinking, wow, this is going to go crazy. And we were a bit more naive back then. So we've kind of gone in and thought, wow, this is going to be really popular.
My worst nightmare. Nick's run over to me. Stick the reserve up 50 grand.
Exactly. Up the reserve 50 grand. Property doesn't sell. He ends up buying it 50 grand less.
It was a whole play.
So it was genius, but I would rather not take. There are if you don't know what the pre-offers are, then whatever happens on the day happens on the day.
Right.
Can I ask a question?
I actually had a question quickly because I just had a business idea.
Go on.
Have you
my
ever
This could go anywhere.
have you ever considered tokenizing properties and selling and auctioning percentages of properties?
So interesting enough.
Fractional ownership.
Yeah.
There's a bank that are doing that at the
there's
moment.
do you know Duncan?
Yeah, the tab.
Yeah.
There.
Yeah. He
So
does that.
he's been trying to push it for years. It's never taken off. He's got this
What, he
guy who's
auctions
very
it?
successful, not an auction, but he wanted to bring property investment and ownership to the masses. And then obviously a lot of people aren't going to ever have the kind of money that they can buy a whole property in as an invest. So his idea was to sell and almost run it like a stock market.
Yeah.
Yeah, you
where
can come in, you can come out.
You can come in, come out whenever you want, and they'd be based on valuations of the property as to how much your percentage share is worth, and et cetera, et cetera. It's a very hard sell.
So complicated.
He's successfully done it on a few properties.
Few, but not
Duncan,
volume.
there is
It's
a-
not
but I
mass.
don't
It's
think
not a
it's gonna
scalable business.
really
I don't
scale
think it's a
up, yeah.
scalable
It's tricky.
business.
It's
But
not
there's
the
a
first
gap
person
there.
to try.
There is, but I
Copyright,
don't think
copyright.
people can get their head round.
But if you've just thought about
messy.
that,
Yeah.
then you're on the right lines for a sort of being an entrepreneur, because you have to think. You have
Don't
to
sow that
no,
seed,
I'm
please.
just saying that. But you have to think things like that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
In order
it's
for
true.
everyone to
No, it's
poo-poo
true.
the idea, but if you're not coming up with ideas, then no
it's-
one's going to essentially.
Well, if Duncan can't do it, then how can I do it?
Yeah,
he's
and
done
he
it
had-
successfully.
He had like
but
50
it's
million
whether or-
behind him. To
I
do
think
it with.
his dream was to do it on hundreds
Huge,
hundreds
thousands,
of properties
yeah.
on a huge scale. And I think they've done it because they've got the big investor pool and
Yeah.
whatever else, and they can sell 5% to
people
that
trust
one,
what
and
they're
3%
saying.
to that one, and 10% to that one.
So do you think it will ever be possible?
But it's possible.
It's been.
No, but
Someone
possible.
tried to
Scale it.
Someone
Yeah.
on a slightly different thing to what he'd set up with Tab and with Duncan. I was reading this article the other week about somebody who set up essentially a market for trading properties, but you I can't really explain it very well, but they say like it's in there like a city type organization institution, which was almost like a stock market or a trading thing of properties. But it's again it just flopped. It's people always try and take a different angle on
did a
so-
brilliant
Well,
job of
some
explaining
work.
that.
Yeah, it was
no,
terrible.
I couldn't.
But some
Yeah,
work,
terrible,
but some work,
They,
some don't. Yeah.
It's I think people sometimes try and reinvent these ways to invest property when actually it's quite a simple matter, bricks and mortar.
What was your question?
My question was staffing.
Yep.
I mean, you spoke about the good old days being in the room as a junior. How do you go from being in that sort of style of auction to stood in front of a camera? How do you teach someone that to stand there with a hammer and
I can tell
for
you I
new
can-
staff? Yeah,
There's
It's
no
weird,
way I
yeah,
could
it's a
do it.
weird one.
because how do they?
Learn,
You can
I mean,
they only learn on the job.
on the
I
job,
presume.
correct.
And if you're
correct.
doing
That's
it
how I
every
learned.
6
So, you know,
weeks or so,
myself and my colleague at Savills, who we were sort of coming up at the same time. We'd been there for probably 8 years before we got a chance to go on the rostrum, and it was the same way that our bosses had told us their stories of how they first got on, which was auction day came around. We had two bosses who were the two auctioneers. We were in the office at 7 a.m. getting prepped for the auction, and suddenly one of them runs to the toilet, starts throwing up, has to go home sick. So me and my colleague looked at each other and went, right, let's do it. Let's ask him. So we went up to the other bot. You're not going to be able to offer all those lots yourself today. We'd seen at that point, we'd been involved in 100+ auctions. We'd seen enough. We were like, let's give it. Let's take the risk. Let's do it. And he gave us 5 lots each. Myself and Robin at the back of the catalogue.
If you hadn't made it as an auctioneer, would you have been in musical theatre or something? Yeah?
Probably, yeah.
You love it, yeah?
It's not for everyone.
but how do you
I know,
train?
so how
them?
do you
'Cause
train?
I think
so no one trained me. No one
you
trained
just learn
me.
as you
just
go.
from
And have
what
your
you
own
see
style.
and
Pick up
have
the
your own
patter
style
and-
and learn.
yeah.
Pick bits from
You
this
were
one
so
and that
nervous.
one.
Back in last September.
Because it was
mean,
so
you should see him
so for
before.
the last 5 years
got any
before we
videos?
set up this probate before we set up probate auction, the auctions I'd been running at my company were not the same. So they were timed online auctions, which we call like eBay style. So there's no auctioneer. There's just a bidding panel showing you what the current bid is, and the lot is open for an hour. And during that hour, anyone can jump online, place a bid, come back to it 5 minutes later, see if it's the same way as eBay works.
Yeah.
So
Allsops
I'd had
run something
yeah,
similar.
exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
A few of the other auctioneers
Yeah.
still run it, and something that we're going to
Yeah.
launch as a secondary sort of thing with us soon. So for about a 6-year period, I had not been up on the rostrum. So when we launched this, and Nick was like, "We got to do this live stream," because it was one of the things I realised as well from my previous business and mistakes that I'd learnt from, was I was in total agreement, because unfortunately by having the eBay style auctions and by launching my business with those auctions, you remain a faceless business. And so much of the auction world is about building a trustworthy reputation and a knowledge of that person. So when Nick said, "No, we're doing live stream," I thought, yeah, great, we've got to. If we want to really announce ourselves on the stage here, that's what we've got to do. So yeah, the first time I was back up there, and I'd never done it in that style before either, where I'd always done it to a room full of 1,000 people, which was nerve-wracking in itself, but after the first couple, it just becomes second nature. So I had to kind of learn all over again, and it's taken me probably up till now to really get comfortable. And now I feel genuinely, Nick would come in
first
taking
couple
the
of-
piss because I'm like pacing up and down the
First
office.
couple of auctions, he's
going
like
getting myself
breathing
psyched up.
beforehand.
And he
whatever
used stood
else.
there the night before in front of the mirror,
Yeah,
hammer in hands. Not
like,
literally, but yeah.
the 5 minutes leading up to the night, I'd get some music on and
Yeah,
get
get you
myself up.
pumped.
But now it's like I'm strolling. Nick will tell you, like last week, I'm sat there eating a big McDonald's breakfast with
Yeah,
a
he's
minute to go.
definitely
before-
relaxed.
much
I mean,
more
for the
relaxed.
that comes with the territory.
And that then helps as well, because being relaxed up on the rostrum, it frees you up to talk naturally to people, and talking naturally and putting your character across is genuinely is what's going to get more bids out of people.
Back in the day, were they like legends? Oh my God, he's coming to the room. It's going to be good. It's going to be entertaining. Was that how it was?
Yeah, there was.
Yeah.
There's a lot of different style of auction. You get the very standard old English style of auctioning, quite slow, steady. There are guys out there who are shushing the auction room midway through taking bids because there's too much noise, and you're thinking, this is
want
an
that
auction, you're not
buzz.
in a
Yeah,
library.
yeah,
You want a
yeah.
bit of action, a bit of buzz. So you get those guys. Then you get the younger kind of generation. There's a couple of very good ones out there. There's who've become almost legends in their own right, who are jumping around the screen and lively and etc. More like American style. And then you just get really dull, plain, boring ones who you think, why are you an auctioneer?
Are we going to get
Bit
back?
stiff.
Is it? Are we going to get back to that? Do you think? Is there any hope?
The
that
rooms?
Yeah.
No. There's
No
one
hope, it's done.
auctioneer out there who are one of the main auctioneers actually, and for whatever reason they still do the room auctions, but they get 10 men and his dog turning up. The whole
Everyone's
point
still
of
bidding
this,
online
everyone's
anyway.
bidding
Yeah,
online, and
yeah.
we actually did a bit of an analysis of it a while back. Because you can still watch it online and everything else, and you can see the lots selling to an online bidder or to a room bidder. Something like 85 or 90% of the lots sold to online bidders.
But I think Allsop were the
They
first
tried
ones
it,
to
didn't
try
they?
and bring
Back.
the live auction back after COVID, and they tried to do it as a COVID. And they tried to make a sort of big fanfare about it, and really they kind of lost the market. So Savills, Auction House, they all went sort of live stream auctioneer, and Allsop went fully digital, and the market preferred the live stream auction. And so Allsop's kind of lost their way a little bit over that sort of COVID period and whatever else. And then they tried to rehash the live auction as a sort of hybrid between online and live, and you could be bidding online, but you could be in the room, and it was a bit of a social. It completely flopped. And I was there as a sort of just observing and whatever else. This is obviously 5 years ago now. Or 4 or 5 years ago. It didn't work. And I can't see it really ever working.
I
I feel like the
understand.
world's moved
what
on.
we're doing.
The world has moved on. Yeah, the days of so much of that has impacted as well on how we run the auction business and how we put the catalogues together and the properties. We used to make sure that if we had any properties that were in, say, the northeast of England, in Newcastle, in Durham, anywhere up there, they would be the last lots of the day. Reason being, you had to give people time to get down from up in north to.
Yeah.
Yes, you had telephone bids, but people always just thought, "Oh, I need to be in the room. I'll come down to the room." So the logistics of everything changed, and now we have last auction, I think we sold a lot to somebody who was in Hong Kong at the time, somebody that was in holiday in Miami. You get people, guy, he's nipped out in his lunch break at work to buy a property because he can do it from his phone.
Okay.
It's
more accessible.
It's much more accessible. So people who, as much as I loved the old room days and the jokes that came out of it and the meeting and the characters and all the rest of it, the plain fact of it, we do better business being online, being digital, being accessible
Is there any
to the world.
future twists that you're going to bring to that?
There's a few things, ideas.
We're allowed to talk about them?
Look, we did a live audience, obviously, for the charity delegates that we've already discussed, and I think we might do a little bit more of that sort of thing.
I think there's some angles to
tie
maybe
into-
showcase what we're doing without changing what we're doing. So you hold the auction online, the setup, the production, the studio, if you like, is there, but you build an event around that auction so people can come and see what we're all about. But then also, we'll have breakout sessions going on, speeches, seminars, CPD stuff for surveyors, for solicitors. I feel like there's a bigger piece that we may build out of this moving forward that you hold a couple of times a year.
I think a lot of it's to do with the sectors that we're working in, because we're not working with traders, we are working with professional bodies in the main. Most of our clients are solicitors or legacy managers or asset managers, and therefore it's quite a professional sector. And therefore, we're trying to see what we can do to kind of work with those people and actually do stuff that actually benefits them at the same time.
It's probably the biggest change in my career is exactly that, is the type of client we're dealing with. So, as Nick said, for my whole career, I've been a trader guy. So all my clients, when I was at Savills, when I've been at various places, and even in my own business, were out and out property traders. Pile them high, sell them cheap, in and out within a matter of weeks. And dealing with those sorts of people, and I include Nick in that from the old days, brings its own challenges. One of the biggest ones is essentially they have a price that they will not sell below because that's what they've purchased at, and nobody wants to lose money until they've tried everything that they can do to sell it. Moving over to who we deal with now, and the other thing with dealing with the traders is, to be fair, you never got much joy or feedback out of them. Even if you smashed it for them on auction day and sold 10 properties wildly over reserves, and that they've made £500,000 of profit on that one day, and you'd call them up and say, it went really well today, did really well. Yeah, thanks. And that would be it. Like, it's just another day's business to them.
As a trader,
we
never celebrated the wins.
They never celebrate wins properly.
The skill's always in the buying.
On to the next deal.
We never celebrated
the celebration, as you say, for the traders was them getting the deal in the first place.
Yeah.
The hard work to get that. So now, the very first auction we held for Probate.Auction, someone left us a review. It literally brought me to tears. It was a lady it was a horrible story of, it was actually, she was the executor of this house. Her daughter was the beneficiary. It was her ex-husband's house, but he'd made her the executor. But the shared daughter was receiving the benefits of the sale of the house. This had dragged on for 2.5 years. She'd been trying to sell this property on the open market. Her daughter just simply wanted it out of her life because it was a horrible story. Her daughter had found her father unfortunately dead in the house, and so having that house hanging around was like it was like a weight on her daughter's shoulders. We'd immediately sold it within 4 weeks of her contacting us. And she was so happy. She rang us up immediately in floods of tears. I can't believe what you've done for me. It's so amazing, etc., etc. Repeat that 20, 30 times every month is what we're finding.
I think we also got a higher price than she'd had it.
There was that as well. But on a personal level, the satisfaction for me and for our team is huge. We love that. The feeling of that we've actually done something that's benefited someone in a good, positive way, and we've not just made a trade of £500,000.
I'm sitting here enjoying you. I've known you for years, but I don't know you very well. But sitting here watching, a word I use all the time, the gravitas, and the joy and the excitement you've got for the business, and having this man beside you giving that to you and allowing
Massively.
you to
I
deliver
mean,
and fulfill your talent is awesome.
And I find that's what's. I look back over the 4 years that I was running my own company, and it was just me as a sole principal, and having a partner. Not to get all mushy, but like Nick alongside me is what I was missing. See, I told you we were friends. No, but genuinely, because my passion for auctions, everyone will tell you, is I'll talk you till the cows. You know, I will bore you to death. I love auctions. It's what I've done since I left university.
My family hate talking about auctions.
You know, and
I'm so bored of it.
But and it's funny because I think I've seen over the last year that passion and that fire be lit inside you as well, and sitting there, I've taken a lot of pleasure sitting and watching the pleasure that Nick's had out of this business.
When we title this up, it's got to be called the Dream Team. Yeah, it's got to be. Yeah,
They are the video of them two
It's a
kissing.
very,
isn't it?
it's a very rewarding space.
Yeah.
You know, you're essentially helping people that have struggled to realise the value. Not in all instances. Sometimes you're getting it front end and it's start to finish in 9 weeks and done and dusted. But sometimes they've been involved in this process for such a long time, especially straight after COVID. You had like probates that up until about a year ago, probates were taking up like 11, 12 months. So they'd lose a family member. Then they're dealing with the probate 11, 12 months. Then they're dealing with the property sale.
Then they've
Could
got
be
another
another
12 months.
18 months. And that process is like, 2.5, 3 years before they're actually
Closure. It's the
before
closure.
they're getting that closure.
You know, if you've had a close loved one pass away, but you're still dealing with their affairs 3.5 years later,
Insane.
it's horrible. It's
what I'm seeing from you though is you've got an exciting business. It's growing, and you feel you're doing good and providing a good service.
100%.
Yeah.
And I so relate to that because the market that I'm
Similar
in,
sort of
no one
thing.
will go anywhere near. And I meet these people and they have no way of accessing this market. And I've given them a solution and I'm delivering. Yeah, I'm being rewarded for it and I'm doing well and the business is growing.
Exactly.
But I feel good about what I'm doing and I'm delivering and watching grow. And I see it in you too. It's amazing.
Yeah.
You should all get Jack Petchy awards.
There he goes.
I don't think they still go. Still go.
I think they're given at school, aren't they?
How do you know who Jack Petchy is?
Because I got one.
He doesn't have a clue who Jack Petchy is as a person.
Okay, fine.
Dagenham Motors, wasn't it?
Talk to me about the deal that you mentioned before, Peckham. There's
was
an
a fun
interesting
one, that.
story behind it.
I
The
thought it was
chicken
interesting.
shop.
It was the
Oh, the
chicken
chi-
shop.
oh
I've still
my
got the
God.
pictures of
Have
it
you
on
got
the
it?
phone.
Yeah.
Sam sent me it the other
Never
week.
eaten a chicken shop.
Oh,
Is that what you
it
No,
was
no,
disgusting.
yeah.
Especially
We-
with
we-
Peckham.
Unless it's
to
1
enter
o'clock in the
part of
morning.
You
building,
walk in,
wasn't
don't
it?
you? And you've got that little reception where and a glass counter where you're buying your chicken.
Which
Yeah,
all looks okay.
yeah, it looks great. And then you walk behind, and I had to do various viewings, and the floor firstly was so greasy that honestly it was like an ice skating ring.
It was
It was
we had to
insane
hold
to
on
get
the
from A
walls
to
sort
B.
of
Yeah.
to-
Genuinely hold on to the walls to get to. And as you're going holding it, you're looking down, and there are just buckets.
I was about
of
to-
buckets full of raw chicken, full of flies, just sitting on it, and you're like,
That's not the story that I heard.
isn't it? No, well,
I heard some lady chase you with her tits out.
no, that wasn't me. That was one of Sam's employees. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh.
I don't even know the background to it, but that's Peckham for you generally. Yeah.
That's Al's neck of the woods.
That happens to Al every day.
There was that was, I mean that was I've
You
not
know, I still
like-
deal with that building.
Do you really?
Is that the one? Is that
Yeah,
43
100%.
Peckham Street?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, yeah.
Brilliant. I was
So
great.
I
I was dealing with that.
Oh,
for a
shit.
bit.
Oh,
I was dealing with that.
It was it was
I put a
incredible
yeah.
that building.
So I've got
wasn't
barbers
it?
on the ground and a bubble tea on the ground. I've got a
You went down that slide,
yeah,
then it opened out into the
yeah, and also on the ground at
Yeah.
the back I've got a doggy daycare, and upstairs I've got a gymnastics school. So yeah, I'm still dealing with it.
on behalf, but we sold on behalf of the new owner.
Yeah,
or
yeah,
is
no, it's
that-
still him. Yeah, yeah. He's
Dutch guy?
I think he's Dutch.
Dutch, yeah.
yeah.
What a throwback.
Matt's trying to say that he dealt with that
I
problem.
was
Was that
dealing
another
with that.
deal you did?
I didn't do that deal. but
I
I'd-
can remember one funny thing with that deal, well, not funny thing, but was when we were waiting for the money to hit our account. And this Dutch guy's come up to the office and he said, no, my guy's wired it over, whatever, and it wasn't hitting. And I've got you calling me going, is it done yet? Is it done yet? I'm like, well, he's here and he signed the papers, but there's no money in the account, but he says he sent it.
Yeah.
And it's sort of that. And we
But this is a good advert for auction because we on market, off market tried to shift
You had
that
loads,
building,
yeah,
and we had nothing. We had nothing. And Sam at the time, and he had got I think he'd exchanged on it with partner rather than an option agreement, and he thought he was about to write off his money because he was just looking to sub-sell it. Nowhere, and we put it in the room. And before the room, just at the last moment, we had two parties. And they came into your room, and then you took over.
Pushed them up.
Yeah.
And then, because that's right, because when we were waiting for that money, I can remember sort of thinking, but we've let the other guy go now, the other person that had made, and it was the back and forth. But yeah, that was a good, that was a nice deal as well.
Yeah,
it was chunky, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. They don't work like that.
Russell, what's your full name?
Russell Taylor.
Middle name?
No middle name.
Really?
It's not what we've heard.
As you had, that was one that was given to me by some friends because I didn't have a middle name. They felt I was missing out on something, so they decided to give me some Spanish name, Ramirez. And for years, literally, they even went as far as trying to change my name by deed poll, but it needed my permission, and obviously they tried to fudge it.
It does look a little bit like Spanish. I don't know.
Nah, German.
No, not
I'm
German.
thinking you're looking a bit more German with the tash.
Really? Yeah.
and the waves.
Yeah. I'm a black German Jew.
Okay.
Can't.
So why Ramirez? Out of interest.
They wanted me to sound. A mutual friend that I'm sure you know, Sam.
Yeah.
Him and his brother wanted me to sound international, mysterious.
Did you back it up?
I did. When I backed it up with my email address for 16 years at Savills was rrtaylor@savills.com. Because there was already a Russell Taylor. No, there was already a Russell Taylor who was head of development at Savills, and I often used to get his phone calls, which was quite interesting as a 21-year-old junior. I received a voicemail once, and I'll never forget. It confused the head out of me, and it was like, "Hey Russell, just to let you know, the private jet's going to be waiting for you at City Airport 6 o'clock tonight. Make sure you're there." I'm thinking, what the hell's going on? Obviously, it was a message for the more senior Russell Taylor. I got a bit excited at first, but no, they said, right, well, you're going to have to, what's your middle name? And this was, and I just, I don't know, well, my friends call me Ramirez. So they were like, okay, well, it's R.R. Taylor then. So,
Wow.
That's funny.
Why didn't you change it to Ramirez for the bands?
I should do, really, shouldn't I? Probably a bit old to change the name now.
Never too old.
This is a really boring question. Why is it probate auction and not probate auctions?
So, well, it's not probate auction, though.
No, it's not.
What is it?
It's a common mistake.
Probate.Auction. There's a dot.
There is a dot
If
on
you
there.
have a look,
You've got it.
you'll see the dot just between the words.
But you're not
You
the first
shat
one.
yourself.
I fucked
And you
it.
definitely won't be the last.
No, that's right. That's right.
We had
Yeah,
an
the
issue.
yellow
Yeah,
mugs.
the mugs are right.
Yeah.
We
Probate
even had an
auction,
issue with
resi
company's house
auction.
to begin with, didn't we?
We did.
Misregistering us as just
Wow.
probate auction. But why do you think we might be probate.auction?
Why do I think that?
Yeah,
So that's the website.
Fuck
that's what it
knows.
says on the tin. That's our website.
That's the website.
Our URL is probate.auction.
It was
Oh,
it's
really?
it's-
What, not
it's
even
to do with-
.com?
Not .com, no.
Oh,
We've-
wicked.
We've,
It's
just
we've
the
got the
.auction.
handle .auction.
Oh, that's clever.
So yeah.
Is your socials probate DOT auction?
No, just,
No, but there's some ideas happening that we can't say too much.
don't know about them.
Really cool. Okay.
You do the dot
And
auction.
also, I've got quite a lot of dirt on you, Russell.
I
Not
know you
dirt, but
do.
a lot of information. Talk to me about the white Volkswagen.
Nick, you're going to learn so
You're
much.
going to
from
learn a
this.
lot about me. This is stuff I haven't revealed to my new business partner because he probably wouldn't be my business partner if I had. Although I'm sure there's plenty of stories of Nick in his youth, which he probably wouldn't want me to know. The white Golf was a very well-known car on the streets of Chigwell in the late 90s, early 2000s.
Yeah.
As it was the most luxurious car of me and my friends at the time as 17, 18-year-olds, because I had written off my first car within a week of having it, and therefore kindly received my mum's car, which was at the time all singing, all dancing, brand new Golf. The time when most people still had wind down windows, this had electric windows, etc., etc. I therefore became generally the designated driver for most evenings, and therefore the white Golf took on a life of its own.
It sounds
So much
very
so
in
that-
between.
Designated-
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm
The
sure yeah.
The designated driver until someone put a fish under your seat.
Well, that was until I stopped allowing other people in the car because of the fish incident. Yes.
How long did it take you to find out there was a fish under?
The fish incident didn't become apparent to me for about 2 months. And you can imagine. So
Do you want to put context about
let's
your
put
nose?
this in context.
Yeah.
So I have an issue with smelling, an issue with my nose. Always have.
Polyps.
Say that again.
Polyps.
It started out as polyps and has developed into other things over time.
You do sound quite nasally. Yeah.
Correct, yes.
That
So you-
As a
that
lot
might
of
be a
people
Jewish
say.
thing as well,
There's
though.
a bit
Let's
of
be
the
honest.
Jewishness in
Yeah.
that and a bit of the nasal
So
problems.
you can't smell, is what we're saying.
So, but the
You can't smell.
bottom
So
line
if
is
I
have
walked
no
up to
sense
you
of
right now
smell.
and farted in your face, you wouldn't smell it.
No, I wouldn't.
Don't
we
do
had,
that.
we had a very large dog in the office yesterday, which belonged to the person who sits next door to me, and numerous times during the day, my colleague would roll his chair back and go, "Oh, you stink! The dog's done a massive And I'm sat there just none the wiser, and he's going, "What's wrong with you? Can you not smell? It's like the dog has just dropped one on the floor here." And no, can't really smell.
I don't know if that's an advantage or a
Taste,
disadvantage.
it then does impact on taste,
Oh,
but
no.
I
gotta be a
don't know
killer.
how, but I seem to get on okay with taste.
I go
certain
through
tastes, but
phases. I can actually sometimes
smell
smell
sometimes.
everything and anything to the point where you could be sitting there and I can smell your breath and then I can go 2 weeks without being able to smell a single thing.
Interesting.
It's,
Probate.Auction
I've
got
got
smelling.
broken nose, so sinuses,
common thing,
sinuses
isn't it?
sinuses are not great.
So this just going back to the fish situation, having no sense of smell meant obviously we should probably rewind a bit, shouldn't we? And I should explain from the start. Hot summer's day, we're at my friend's house, all playing football in the garden. As you do, we got into my friend's house, stuck my keys in my wallet, my phone, whatever, on the table indoors, playing outside football for a number of hours, not knowing who's really coming or going. One of my close friends decided it would be fun to grab my car key, take the car, go to Tesco quickly down the road, buy a humongous mackerel or whatever it was, back into the car, bury it deep under the sort of carpet of the car, essentially, literally like under the mats, under the carpet, buried it under there, closed it all up. They're thinking, oh, in a couple of days it will start stinking. At the time, didn't realise that I could not smell anything, and it then stayed there for 2 months.
Well, your mum.
I had the car to myself at this point. It was my.
And how did you find
So
out?
it so happened at the time we had a dog. We had a dog at the family house, and I
Dog wouldn't even get in the car.
I'd got on a phone. I think I was going to. No, what was I doing? I know I was going somewhere. Anyway, taking the dog with me. The dog's in the car. And we're halfway through this journey, and the dog's going wild. The dog's going wild. So I'd never seen it go like this before. And it was in the back, and it's going mad at the carpet. I'm going, what the hell's going on? And like barking, going wild. So I had to pull over. Literally pulled over at the next service station. Gone in the back. I'm thinking maybe there's some food there. There's something. I thought that maybe so I'm like, for the first time, I'm proper like inspecting because I can see where the dogs. I've pulled it all up to literally a rotting carcass of a fish that's been maggots, flies come out of it, all sorts.
What did you?
And I'm just like, I'll be honest, for about, I don't know, for however long, I was so confused. I was just like, what the hell's happened here? Where's this come from?
Did you know it was a man-made error straight away?
Was it?
No,
it was
not
just,
really. At first,
What, you think
I
just a
thought
fish
maybe
just jumped
dog-
out the ocean and
He's
landed on?
confused. He's
But
like,
I'm just confused. I'm like, how has a fish got? My mind's going into overdrive. I was thinking, has the dog brought the fish into the car? I don't know. And then it dawned on me, of course, I've got absolute morons of friends who would clearly do something like this to me, who would take great pleasure in my displeasure from this.
the stories I've heard, how it got so bad, no one would get in your car, but no one's going to tell you.
They were literally at the point of going, we've got to bloody just tell him.
Yeah.
Because he's never going to find it until this happens. Because they're waiting for the enjoyment of me going, "You idiots! What, you put this in there?" And they were clearly getting rather frustrated that wasn't happening.
But were they getting in your car in the meantime?
So a few
They stopped.
times they'd got in the car, but where they were obviously, now I look back, and they were going,
Oh, it smells.
"Oh, it's this smell of pongs a bit in here." You know, at the time we were young, and there were other smells perhaps in the car that I attributed it to, that we might have been getting up to extracurricular activities, but. Yeah, and then it got to the point where they literally were like, they thought the smell was so bad that they wouldn't then get in the car. So,
Nick.
yeah.
Yeah.
Do you have a
haven't got
similar
much-
story?
you definitely haven't got much.
No, I'm going to ask you. I'd like to get to know you a little bit.
Yeah.
What sort of things do you worry about?
Worry about.
That's good. Like, how do you switch off? Because it sounds like you're
He doesn't.
on all the time.
You've got 4
I-
kids, haven't you?
I've got 4 kids.
Yeah, like that. Good man.
How do I switch off? I tend to switch off with series on TV.
Sopranos?
I never really did The Sopranos. I think it was
Right,
I wasn't
Nick.
into series at the time of Sopranos.
Oh, you should watch
But
it.
anyway,
Still holds
I mean, I just
today.
watched that one in
Okay.
the City as ours.
That's good.
That was pretty good.
Yeah,
That's good.
Yeah,
Okay.
very good.
But actually, my wife loves to travel, and as a family, we quite like remote beaches on kind of like islands anywhere in the world. And actually, I find that I can switch off there. Not because I turn my phone off, because my phone's always on. But I'm quite happy to work on holiday and do a few bits, send a few emails, sit around the pool, sit on the beach, or pace up and down talking to Russell or talking to Ben or whoever the case may be. But I find that there's a few places in the world where I can go on holiday and I can just unwind.
And will your wife let you do that when you go away?
Well, that's a good question, actually. I'm at a point now where things are getting easier. I've always been hands-on. So with as I mentioned earlier, my son's pretty ADHD. In fact, I've got 4
You should
kids.
probably
I don't think
explain
any
your
of them.
home setup.
Yeah, I
4
don't
kids,
think
5
4
dogs.
kids.
and
No,
all
4
that.
kids, 3 dogs. It's
A lovely wife.
relatively intense place. There's big
4 kids, 3 dogs.
There's big personalities in my house. Everyone's strong-willed. I don't think anyone's neurotypical. That includes me, my wife, and my 4 kids.
Does that mean that you're all on the spectrum?
Yeah, in some capacity or other, I'm sure. Yeah, whether it's ADHD or whatever else, but we can be. It's never a it's very rarely calm until everyone goes to bed, and then it's calm. But it's all right. But I'm not sure I would change it, because I think I need that sort of madness. My kids are equally as chaotic and mad. And
Yeah.
The quickest
But
thing
it's-
I
but it's quite fun.
learned about Nick was he doesn't switch off.
No.
Never.
Well, I
Whether
wake
he
up
might
at 2
be
in
on
the
the
morning
beach
and
in
I'm like
Bali,
sending messages and emails.
But he'll
and-
be sending messages, emails. The first thing he said was, the first thing he showed me actually before his first trip since we were partners was, "I'll check this out that I've just got delivered," and it was a second computer screen, a
Monitor.
a monitor,
a plug-in monitor.
a plug-in monitor that you can take away on holiday with you.
Yeah, that was slightly different. We had just
No,
we had just
I'm
launched
messing.
the business. I hadn't really in the first 12 months. I didn't really go away, and normally my wife would have me away pretty much every half term, every Easter holiday, Christmas, summer, and I other than the summer holiday, I didn't really take a break, and that was because I was pretty focused on sort of driving this. She'd gone away. She'd taken the kids and whatever else, and I was like pretty determined to make sure I saw this through. And when I did go away, there was only the 4 of us at the time,
Yeah, it
maybe
was-
5
yeah,
of us.
No, it was different.
And so things were starting to build, and therefore there were appraisals coming in, and I pretty much back myself to appraise a property better than anyone else in the country in terms of like residential rundown houses. I don't care if you've studied to be a RIC surveyor. I'm a better appraiser than anybody in the
Really?
just because I've been doing it such a long time. And I have a pretty keen eye for what something is going to sell for. Even in the other business, I pretty much understand. I'm pretty sure that and sometimes I'm surprised something goes more than I thought, but typically I'm kind of on.
Can I ask on that? How close are you working with Russ? You get your instruction. Is he emailing you and saying, "What do you reckon this is worth?" Before I give the value?
No, we sit
Or is
2
he
seats away from
independent?
each other.
Yeah,
So
okay.
but if I'm on holiday, I'm sort of this time I was doing appraisals and pinging them back to the office because I didn't want to let anybody down.
Yeah.
One of the sort of key things for me, and it goes back to the sort of service side, if you're an LPA receiver or you're a probate solicitor and you're sending me through an appraisal, I want to come back to you ideally within the hour with a detailed report back on that property and tell you what I think about it and what I think the guide price should be, what I think the reserve price should be. And it was really important for me to instill that in the rest of the team. Now, it's not always possible to get it back in an hour. Maybe it has to be the same day. But it's those things are important. I think those are the things that other businesses, other auction houses possibly don't do. And therefore, I want to make sure that people know they can count on us. They need an appraisal. We're getting it back to you straight away.
I think it's one of, you've touched on it there, is one of our USPs as well, and one of our key. We like as a team to work very collaboratively. There's no
Egos.
This is your client. It's not eat what you kill and all of that business, because that serves no one but the person.
Great.
And as Nick rightly said, we want happy clients who have had a good service and have had the benefit of all our expertise and all our knowledge. Yeah. We're very collaborative in the office.
It's a good point. We didn't want to have people going, that's my commission, that's my commission. I'm not interested in all that. I don't think it's particularly helpful to have people competing with each other within the company.
I 100% agree. It costs me a fortune, but everyone earns if everybody.
Yeah,
exactly.
We're the same. So in my other businesses, my admin team, every transaction, unless me or Ben do that deal, every single person in the company, from admin to research to the sort of relationship team and acquisitions team, everybody earns out the deal. And it's just kind of how I thought was the sort of best route to success. Yeah. And keep everybody engaged. And the auction business is the same. Yeah. I'd rather put someone on a higher salary than have to pay them a commission, because I want everybody, and maybe we'll drop in bonuses and whatever else, but I want everybody pulling in the same direction, and I don't want someone going, "That's my client," and I've
seen it. You've done that. One of the previous auctioneers I'd worked at, it was a horrible atmosphere. There'd be fights over, but I took that call originally, so he's my client. And that person, and then this sort of bitterness becomes, and then I saw it bear out in when the catalogue was released and the marketing period. If someone calls up about that property, if they call our office up about any of the properties, any of us in the team will speak to them at length about that property. If you'd called up this person about that property or about a property, their attitude was, well, it's not mine, so you need to speak to so and so. He might not be here now, call back later or whatever. It's not healthy. It's not a good.
100%.
Also, I think it's the expertise. It's the solution side of what we're doing. Yeah. I think there's, we've been around the game a long time, and therefore both me and Russell, and we know a lot of people, and there are situations where. We had a property that came in from a sort of pretty big firm of solicitors, and it was some farmland and whatever else, and through a property that I had a while back, and I had a restricted covenant issue and whatever else, and I really understood a bit more about restricted covenants, but I knew where to go, and that's not an easy thing. Restricted covenants, I'm sure you probably come across it. There's very few experts in that space. Yeah. But I did a deal a few years back, and it was a really complex restricted covenant case with the NHS, and we ended up doing a deal. It took us about a year to negotiate it, but it was only at the point where I found an expert in that space. But I then went to, and I knew he was an expert in farmland, so I went to this big firm of solicitors and said, look, before you do anything, you need to speak to this person to understand that restricted covenant. They're so grateful because no one else has given them that advice before. In fact, I had the same thing at a conference I was at the other week, that probably the biggest name in probate, I won't mention his name, but he's a solicitor. He's exceptionally established. He sits on multiple different boards and whatever else. And I'm just having a conversation with him, and I know him quite well now. And he had a restricted covenant issue on his late mother's house. And by talking to me, I said, well, actually, why can't you do this and why can't you do that? But let's just double check when you speak to this guy. Again, eternally grateful. Because I've probably unlocked a problem for him that he didn't know how to unlock.
You get bored of it, but a phrase in my office is karma. Yeah, just give them the right advice, push them in the right direction. Exactly. It's not all about that; it will come back to you.
Correct.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's getting a bit late, and I'm pretty much
I've just realised it's
Got all my questions that I'd like to know,
Russ is in
and
trouble.
I'm
look.
in banging trouble, mate. She's going out at 7:30.
lads, it's been an
well.
absolute pleasure. You had good fun.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
it's good.
Yeah.
Feel like we've
Yeah, it's
learned
been good,
quite a
yeah.
lot, and big up to Probate Auction. There'll be a lot of clips that come out.
Auction.
Probate.Auction, my apologies.
You're in.
Thank you all very much for watching. Till next time, God bless.